Hello everyone and welcome to week 8 of an introduction to agent-based modeling. In this week we're going to be on unit 6, right? Yeah, unit 6. Sorry, just had a kind of a moment of forgetfulness there. So unit 6 is about analyzing ABMs. There's been a lot of questions about how to look at the data you're getting and how to analyze it, how to maybe compare it to empirical data, things along those lines. And a lot of those topics are topics we're going to cover now in Unit 6. So hopefully you'll have some answers to your questions as we go forward with this unit. You are going to be using some statistical software. I use R, which is the one I take you through. There was a question, by the way, on the forums that somebody said that their R looked different than the R that I was using. And so I've been using the Mac version. The Mac version and the PC version are slightly different. If you're on the PC, I highly recommend using RStudio, which is an add-on to R, and it'll make it look a lot more like the Mac version. In fact, in future, I think I'm going to actually switch to just using, because there is an RStudio for the Mac. So I think I'm going to switch to just using RStudio because that has a more similar look and feel between the different platforms than the actual base R version. So that's one question people had about Unit 6, but hopefully it'll all go smoothly. If you have any problems, like for instance, if it's just not looking right or anything like that, if there's a big difference you can't figure out, please let me know and I'll try and address it. Maybe even create a small little video just kind of addressing the differences between the two. Sorry, my other speaker is turned on, so I've got to turn that volume off real quick so it doesn't bother it. Okay, there it is. Okay, got it. Okay, so Unit 6. The other big part about this week, it's a fairly slower week after our big week working on the model design assignment, is the peer reviews, right? So you're going to be asked to do 3 peer reviews. They have to be turned in by the end of this month, essentially, so the end of this week. You can do more if you want. There's no problems with that. The system will keep giving you peer reviews to do, but once you've done 3, you get full credit for the peer review assignment. Okay. One small note that I mean to add, I'm going to add into the final model design, right? Or model assignment. It's not as big a question for the model design. We've had people basically just turn in a model from the models library. Obviously, that's not in the spirit of the course, right? I want you to show that you're extending or expanding or designing a model differently from one in the models library. So if you're reviewing a model later on, not for the model design, obviously, but if you're reviewing a model later on, keep an eye out for that and just kind of flag it for us and we can take a look at it, right? As much as possible, we want the model to be generated. It can't be, it's fine to take a model in the models library and extend it dramatically to solve a problem that's different from what it was originally intended for, right? Or to capture a new phenomenon. That's fine. In fact, that's encouraged to some extent for those who don't want to build the model from the ground up. But it's basically not keeping the spirit of just taking a model and turning it in as is, right? If you're doing a peer review, that's something to keep an eye out for. Okay, so let's turn over to some questions. So I had a couple of questions come up in email, right? And so this one came up. I've created a simulation study that is not supported by data. The model was developed in NetLogo. I'm planning to submit this model to a journal. My question is, does every study, and they talk about the particular study, but does every study need to be validated by some data for having scientific validation? So my feeling is that validation is not an all or nothing. It's not like a model is valid or not valid. It's valid to the extent to which you have validated the model, right? And it's valid to the extent to which the audience that the paper is written for agrees that the model is valid, right? So you're always writing a model to make an argument or to prove a point to a particular audience. Sometimes that audience is just you, right? Like you're just like, I just want to see what this does and kind of play around with it and see if it gets the result that I want to see out of it. And that's fine, in which case the model is as valid as it needs to be to convince you of the result, right? But so a lot of times it's a scientific audience, right? And so if a group of your scientific peers have got together and say this is what makes a model valid or not valid, right? Then you have to agree to those standards in order to have your model be considered valid by that community, right? And I'm not saying anything profound here. This is just saying that, like, in order to get accepted into a place where you want to get it accepted, you have to meet the standards of that community, right? And that's a scientific process. Scientific process is built around peer review, right? And peer review means making sure that what your peers think of the paper is good, right? That they agree with it, right? So what I wrote back, so that's a long-winded philosophical kind of take, but what I actually wrote back is, the validation is really determined by the question you're trying to answer. For instance, if you're trying to test out two competing mechanisms to see which one achieves a particular result, right? So it could be, let's imagine, like they were talking about social networks and friendships, right? So there's somewhat of a debate in friendships whether weak ties or strong ties have a larger effect on various aspects, right? So you could have some imagined result, right? Like that, like distribution of income, right? And you could look to see whether weak ties or strong ties are more likely to lead to jobs, and then see what that effect has on the distribution of income, right? And explore how that affects the results, right? And that in those cases, you're not really validating the model with empirical data, output data, right? You're just seeing but you're still validating the model because of the fact that you're taking the two different mechanisms, you're exploring them, and you see which one generates a pattern of behavior that's more reminiscent, more similar to a pattern of real-world behavior that you see, right? On the other hand, right, if you're trying to predict using the agent-based model who is going to be the most influential YouTube star tomorrow, right, that's a very concrete question, a very specific question. And if you have not validated that model with appropriate data, then I have very little reason to believe your model, right? And so it really depends on the question you're trying to answer, and then it's tied up to what the community that you're writing for defines as a valid model for that question, right? Yeah. So, we're going to get into validation and verification a lot more in the very next unit, Unit 7, and also replication. So I'll leave that for now, right? But that's a quick take. Sometimes people read. So I wrote this paper called Agent-Based Modeling and Marketing Guidelines for Rigor with Roland Russ. Some people read it, and one of it talks about is the golden standard for quantitative marketing modeling is empirical output validation. And that's true in that audience, in that environment, right? But in other environments, in different audiences, that may not be the golden standard, right? So it really depends upon what you're trying to do and where you're trying to publish your work. Okay. So, wow, a couple questions have come in on YouTube as well. Is there any way to integrate NetLogo with Matlab or Python code? For example, for behavior of one type of agents, I have a black box model developed in Matlab neural network. This is a good question. So the simple answer is yes, because NetLogo provides something called a controlling extension, which allows NetLogo to be controlled by platforms outside of NetLogo, right? And that's written in Java, so anything that can interface with Java can write in that. And so Python has something called Jython, for instance, that can do that. I'm sure Matlab has an ability. I don't know Matlab as well. I'm sorry. And then the other thing NetLogo makes available is the ability to write wrapper scripts in Java that you can then make into your own commands in NetLogo. So you can basically call, for instance, a Matlab command if I believe Matlab has an API that allows you to do that directly from NetLogo, right? There are really good interfaces already built in NetLogo for both Mathematica and R that I know about, and I would be surprised to find out that there is not one built in Matlab. Oh, in fact, it looks like there is. There's, at least up on GitHub, there's something called the NetLogo Matlab extension. It's not a standard part of NetLogo, but I would definitely try and take a look at it and see if it's useful for you. Python is an interesting idea. I don't see an interesting way, in the obvious way. There's no obvious Python up there already option, but I'm sure that there is some way to do it. There's a question about it in Stack Overflow. And apparently there was also something called Tangelo that was, I remember reading about this in 2012, was being developed, which was kind of a NetLogo alternative written in Python, right? So anyways, there are options that will allow you to integrate. It may be a lot of work, is the simple answer, right? Depending upon what you're doing, right? So thanks for the question, Pam. Hopefully that helps. Okay. Peer reviews. I reviewed 4. How does the scoring work? What benefit to you or my peers is there to review more? I might find time to do so. Okay, this is from Vince. So Vince, so you only have to do 3. There is no quantifiable benefit for you for doing more, right? Like you're not getting bonus points or anything like that. However, there is an implicit benefit, right, which is that you're looking at more and more model designs. You're getting to see how people are writing them. You're maybe getting inspired by them and getting into so it's kind of an educational benefit to you, right? On the other hand, right, what benefit is there to me? Well, the benefit, or the administrative staff at Complexity Explorer in general, right? The big benefit to us, right, is that you might have done your 3, but someone else out there might not do their 3. Right, and so the more reviews we can get, the more feedback we can give to people, right, and so the less we have to kind of intervene in the system and kind of put some additional reviews in for ones that haven't gotten 3 reviews. So so there you go. That's the answer, and so hopefully that helps you out, Vince, in deciding, right? Okay. So Lisa Gajari asked, do I absolutely have to use NetLogo for a model? I really want to use AnyLogic. I will be designing a hybrid SD ABM as part of my dissertation. Lisa, that sounds great if you want to use AnyLogic. The problem is that for this class, I can't expect everyone to learn every single language out there, right? And I can't grade every single model out there, so we have to use the peer review system to help grade the assignments, which means we have to establish some baseline that everyone knows and understands and can interpret, right? And for this class, that's NetLogo, right? And so, unfortunately, if you want to just go along in the class, not worry about the final project, and just kind of, and I think you can even, if you do perfect on all the other exams, you can even skip the final project and still get a certificate. But if you just not want to worry about that, right, then fine, feel free to write in AnyLogic. One small note, I personally, I've written in, actually I haven't written anything in AnyLogic. It might be the one agent-based modeling platform I haven't written in, but I have played around with it in the past. They just never completed a model in it. But I've written things in Swarm, I've written things in Repass, I've written things in Mason. I've played around with Ascape. I've played around with just about all the packages out there. I still find it useful to code something up in NetLogo first. It's an easier kind of solution to what's going on. Allows me to prototype my model, even if I'm planning to eventually write, say, if I'm going to write it myself in C++, right? Or if I'm going to code it up in Repass or something along those lines. I still find it useful to write the model first in NetLogo, just to kind of get a basic idea for how I want the model logic to play out. And even if that doesn't help me at all, it does kind of provide me another platform which maybe has a simplified version of the model that I can use as a cross-validation to compare to the AnyLogic model, right? That's the simple answer. Unfortunately for this class, you do have to turn in a NetLogo model. Even if you're going to work on AnyLogic in the long run, I would highly recommend playing around with NetLogo and maybe building up a prototype model in NetLogo first. So hopefully that helps you think through the process. Hopefully it's not too much of a discouraging answer out there. So Carolina has a question. Is it possible to embed a NetLogo model into a PowerPoint presentation to show alive during classes or on a website? How? Okay, well, got 2 answers for you. The easiest answer, and the way that I often do it, is that, well, got 3 answers for you. The way because I just realized that's not the way I often do it. The way I often do it is I actually just insist on presenting from my own laptop. I have the NetLogo model loaded up and ready to go, and I run it right there, right? And even if you can access, even if you can't present from your own laptop, but you can get access to the machine ahead of time. NetLogo is a fairly lightweight install. A lot of times, I wouldn't count on it, but a lot of times you can get it to install on the desktop and stuff like that, and so you can get it working, right? Anyways, the other way, so the second way, so like let's say I have no idea if I'm going to be able to get my own laptop to work, or if I can't get to the access to the machine ahead of time to install NetLogo. What do I do? Well, I basically I make a movie of it, right? And let me show you real quick how to do that. So, oh, NetLogo 5.2. I don't want that one. Sorry, loading up the wrong NetLogo version. Give me a split second to switch over. Sometimes my command launcher is not the smartest. Okay. So here I got my NetLogo window up, right? Close out my view. Okay. So hopefully you can see this, right? Okay. And you're not going to see this, but in Models Library, if you just search for a movie, there's an example called Movie Recording Example, right? And this is the simplest way to do it. This list requires no other technology than NetLogo to make this work, right? You could also, there's other screen capture techniques out there, like I use Camtasia, which is what I'm using right now to make my movies sometimes, right? Actually, it's not what I'm using right now, but it's what I use to make the videos that I record and put up online, right? But this is doing it just within NetLogo, right? So here you have this little model. It just kind of makes some birds flock around, right? And you can hit Start Recorder, hit Go. It's going to slow down a little bit because it's capturing a bunch of data. We can then hit Save Recording. It'll tell us to choose a movie name to save it to. Put it on the desktop, right? Maybe NetLogo. Okay. And then, so now let me bring it up. I'm double clicking on my desktop. Hopefully it'll load. It's giving me some complaints about because I haven't run it on this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let me add in the capture and you can see it. Okay. Blu-ray. I just have it playing in my Blu-ray player because it's my default video player, but it'll work in just about anything. Oh. So there you go. So there's the video actually playing, right? It works pretty well, right? It actually does it in MP4 format, which is a fairly compact format. It's also supported by YouTube and others, right? So that should work out pretty well for you. That's the second way of the three ways to do it. Okay, we'll delete that window. And by the way, so you might ask, well, how did it actually make that movie? Well, if you go over to the Start Recorder, well, you see it uses this extension vid, right? Going to make those bigger a little bit. It uses extension vid, and then if it creates the spinner, it creates the model, and then Start Recording basically says carefully. Now, carefully is a command we haven't used yet. Carefully is like try in other languages. It basically says try to do this command. If for some reason it generates an error, then execute this, which is the generate and specify out the error message, right? So this command is saying carefully try to start the recorder, which is one of the big commands. If that causes you any problems, then generate an error message, right? Okay. And then when you do the save recording, all it does is basically stop the recording and save it out to a path, okay? So it's a very simple kind of command. So, often I just actually, if I want to do a movie in NetLogo, I will literally just go to this example code, copy and paste this code into a blank document, load up my own model, copy and paste this code back in, and it should work fine. So that's the second way. Let me show you one last way. Darn it. I accidentally closed that out and I didn't see. Okay, good. Okay, so let me show you one last way. And, you know, actually, I'm thinking I'm probably going to record. Let me actually add this to my notes. I'm going to do a video on NetLogo Web for hopefully for Unit 8. And NetLogo Web is basically a web-based version of NetLogo. So let me show it to you. And this is yet another way to demo things. Chrome, NetLogo Web, where are you? There we go. Okay. Okay. So this will allow you to run a lot of the sample models, or if you bring your own model, you can upload it, right? So right now, for instance, it's loading the cooperation model inside of the web browser, and there's a variety of other ones that you can see there, right, that it's also able to load, right? So let's see, like ants, right? That's one that we all know. So we can bring up the ants model in the web browser itself, and you know it doesn't quite look maybe. You know, this is still very much a beta project, right? And so it's it's not quite as nice. It doesn't run as fast. But if you just want to demo something, NetLogo Web is a good solution for that. It's at netlogoweb.org. You can still see the code. You can also you've got the command center, so you can still execute commands like ask turtles set color yellow, right? And it still works, right? Ants works by actually killing and creating new turtles every time they come back, so that's why. No, actually, sorry, it doesn't. The home base changes the color, so as soon as they go back, they change their color back to whatever they were before. But NetLogo Web is yet another solution to kind of give you an example of how to demo during a live demonstration. I've actually thought about teaching everything inside NetLogo Web, but it just runs a little slow right now just because it's still a web-based operation. And it doesn't fully support everything, like the extensions, which we use quite a bit in this class, right, especially towards the later chapters, don't work well in NetLogo Web. And so those are all things that they're working on in the development team, but they haven't fixed yet. So hopefully that gives you some options to help you, Carol, with doing some demonstrations during a presentation, right? Anyways, so hopefully that'll help you out. Okay. Let's see. You can go quickly look at some of the other questions I had. Had a couple of questions about the payments and deadlines. So if you're viewing this and you haven't made your payment yet, we actually closed off the payment when the first assignment was due, right? And the reason why we did that is just because if you want to get the certificate, right, you basically have to pay by that time in order to get the assignments in and get the certificates, right? And we just feel like that's a good cutoff point. If you're still interested, if you're out there and you're somehow seeing this video and you're still interested in participating and want to pay, we can send me an email and we can see about it. But obviously, you're not going to get the certificate anymore because we've already gone through a couple of deadlines for the certificates, right? The videos, by the way, are always and forever up online for free, right? So you can always access the videos no matter what. It's just accessing the course content, like the rest of the actual Complexity Explorer website, that you can't do unless you've paid the money, right? And the course content, and I've had a lot of questions also about how long the course content will be available for people who are maybe behind in the courses or things like that. Course content in terms of Complexity Explorer, the website, will be available until the end of August, right? August 31st, which is the last day of class, right? However, like I said, the videos are always and forever up online for free, and so you can view the videos forever. And the easiest way to do that, if you want to view the videos after the course is ended, if you want to go back, grab the YouTube playlist, which is available at youtube.com/Complexity Explorer, right? Find the YouTube playlist for Introduction to Agent-Based Modeling Summer 2017, which is available in the playlist sections underneath that. Let me show that to you. It's easy enough to show. So let me bring it up. YouTube.com/complexity. All right, so if you, not that one, this one. All right, so if you're on the YouTube Explorer, Complexity Explorer website, and I'm not logged in as Complexity, good, okay. If you go to playlists, right, there's Agent-Based Modeling Summer 2017. This playlist will always and forever have all of the videos for the class available. So if you just want access to the videos, you can always just go here and directly access them rather than going to the Complexity Explorer website, right? So that's one option about accessing content after the web has the course has ended, right? Or if you just want to access the videos and not be part of the regular course, okay? Let's see, other questions. There's another question about like funds. Okay. Some people are having trouble finding the peer review assignments. They should be, if you go back to the model design experiment, you should see it there. So hopefully you'll see it available. If you're still having troubles with that, let us know and we'll try and figure it out. Carvalho posted the forum. I'm planning to build a model where agents and environment interact. My environment is composed of different neighborhoods with their own properties. How could I set an artificial environment classifying all the world into a concrete number of neighborhoods, example 20? I mean, how can I represent the zoning using the code instead of using a GIS layer as an input? Okay. So this is actually, yeah, there are a bunch of them that kind of do this. The easiest way, right, like there's no way to say I want 20 neighborhoods, right? First of all, let me make that clear. You could define the patch size of the world so that there are only 20 patches, and then each patch could be a neighborhood, right? But if you want multiple patches per neighborhood, then you need to figure out some way to programmatically describe to NetLogo where those different patches are, right? So let's play around with this a little bit. This is actually kind of an interesting little problem, right? So let's see. So if I go over to NetLogo, right? The first thing I'm going to want to do if I'm going to be creating these neighborhoods or zones, right, is I'm going to have to, let's call it zones, it's easier to type, right? So I'm going to tell NetLogo now that patches own a property called zone, right? And then it's a matter of assigning that zone. And if I want 20 neighborhoods, right, the easiest way to do this would be to make 20 vertical strips, for instance, right? And that way what I can do is I can just define a neighborhood as being an x coordinate with a certain value, right? So I can ask patches with, ask patches, sorry, that's all I want to do. And I'm going to say set zone. So first of all, we have to figure out how big the world is, right? So the world is world width. Yeah, okay. Now we do have this problem that I think the default world starts in the middle of the world. So let's change that. This will make our math a little easier, right? So if we edit the world and we instead set the default to be in the lower left, so now we kind of have your standard kind of quadrant 1 of your Euclidean geometry, right? So this is 0, 0 is in the bottom left, you know, and x increases along the bottom and y increases along the top, right? So if we do that, it makes our world a little easier. So let's say actually number, let's actually make this a parameter. So let's make number of patches a parameter. Say at least 1 and go up to 40. Right? Now, actually, here's something interesting we'll need to do. What we're going to go up to is world width. Now, this is an interesting thing. Oh, sorry. You can't actually see that. Let me add that one in because that's actually kind of important. Okay, so this is me setting up the slider, right? So I'm creating a new slider called num patches, which has a minimum of 1 and an increment of 1. And I'm going to set the maximum to world width. Now, this is interesting. If I change the size of the world, it will actually change the maximum potential value of this slider. This is really cool. This is something Netlog added like version 5, I believe, maybe even 5.3, where now the values of the sliders can actually be set based upon a parameter of the model. So because I can't have more neighborhoods than the width of the world, I'm going to set the slider to the width of the world. Right? So I'm going to set that slider to the width of the world. Okay, and that's all you need to see from that. Let me close this out. Okay. And now I'm back here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take world width and divide it by num patches. Now, this is not actually a command yet, but that's going to tell me, if you think about it, that's going to tell me how big my neighborhood is, right? So it's going to tell me how many different patches to assign to my neighborhood. And I'm going to say, let's zone size be world width divided by number of patches. Now, what I can do then is I can say I can say set zone equal to xcore, and I'm going to use divided by zone size. Right? And this will set the zone equal to whatever my x-coordinate is divided by the zone size. So, for instance, in the case where world width and number of patches and number of patches is the same, 32, right? Then it's 1, and x-core divided by 1 is going to be whatever the x-core is. So that's going to be my zone. In the case where it's 16, for instance, then it's going to be 2, and so 1 and 2 are going to be the first one, 3 and 4, and so forth, right? So now I can create some simple Go code, which I'm just going to ask patches to set their patch color equal to 5 plus 10 times the zone, right? And the only reason why I'm doing that is the way Netlog is set up, 5 is the middle value of a color. So I'm just doing the 10, and each color takes up 10 values. Right? So, oh, sorry, screw that. It's not xcore for patches, it's pxcore. If I did this right, should now be able to hit setup and go, and there you go. Right, so I got one zone for every patch. Actually, in the 0 to 32, which means there's actually 33. Right, so if I change it to 22, right, I get a slightly different setup. Right, you can actually say ask patches set p label zone. Right, and I can actually see them. It's kind of hard to see because there's so many. Actually, if I do an edit, let's just make it like 5 by 5. Okay, this will be a little easier to see. Oh, except let's make the patch size be 50. And actually, we can make it even bigger than that. 75. That's almost too big. But anyways, setup. Setup, go, right? And then if we do as patch set below the zone, you can see, right, that the zones exactly are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we make it less than, oh, sorry, this variable is named wrong. It should be number of zones, not number of patches. Obviously, the number of patches is the same. Okay. Setup. Go, right? So now, what am I doing wrong? Because obviously we have more than 4 zones. So world width is 6 divided. Oh, you know what? We want ceiling, I think. zone px. I'm sorry, trying to figure this out. What I did wrong. So 5 divided by 3 should be 1. What am I setting the p label wrong? No, I set p label zone. Huh. Give me a split second. I somehow messed up my math. Zone 2.5, right? Which, oh, interesting. Zone is, oh. I'm sorry. I actually wrote the code right. Everything's fine. The original code was fine. I just forgot to run the set p label zone again, right, to see what the actual zones were. Now, this code actually gives you these weird, where they're part of, where 0, 0.5, and so on forth, right? What you really want is floor, which will round that number down, so it'll take off those 0.5. So now if I hit setup, I go, and I ask patches, set p label. Why are you not giving me the floor? Oh, no. Not zone size floor, but px floor size floor. So, setup, go. Setup. I think I screwed up by, yeah, there we go. That's the code I want. Okay. So I actually fell victim to a number of different things there. So let me explain a little bit the bugs I made, right? So the first bug I made was I kept forgetting to update the patch labels even after I had run it. So it was keep showing me the old patches for when I had more zones. So that wasn't a bug in the code. It was just a user stupidity bug, right? But then the second bug I made, right, was that because when world width is 6 in this case, right, but the number of zones was 3, right, then this value of the zone, when say px core is 1, it's going to be a half, right? And that's a problem, right, because we don't have that well defined as to what does it mean to be a half zone, right? So what I did instead was I took those numbers and I'm rounding down. So I'm rounding it down to whatever the number was before, right? So if it's a half, it's going to get a label 0. If it's 1 1/2, it gets a label 1, and so forth, right? And so that's going to make sure that that all the ones that have the same dividend are going to have the same assigned to the same zone, right? So for instance, I can set it to 2, right, which should make 2 zones, and I can say go, right, and I get 2 zones out of it, right? Okay. So let's set this. Let's change the world again. So just to show you, right, that it works for even large numbers. Let's go up to like 50. Oh, it's too small. Hold on. 50. Too big. Okay. Wow, still too big. Okay. Okay. So here we go. We now have a 50 by 50 world, right? I can set it to an arbitrary number, and I can hit setup and go. And as you can see, it kind of groups some of them together. Now, some of the zones are going to be bigger than other zones because of rounding differences, right? But at least I'll have the exact number of zones I want regardless. Okay? So hopefully that's helpful. That's one little kind of way to create a bunch of different regularly spaced zones with different numbers. In general, though, the technique of kind of algorithmically dividing up your space in some way is going to be the solution you're going to want to go with, right? And this is one way. It's the easiest way because I only use x, right, as opposed to x versus y. If you look at L for all, for instance, I create 2 zones. When I wrote that model, I created 2 zones by saying everything greater than 0 on both x and y was the bar, and everything less than 0 on either x or y is the home place, right? That's another way to do it, right? Okay. So let's see. Let's turn back on the laptop camera, turn off the window capture. Let's go back to see if there's any other questions. So sorry that took me a little while to get through. Uh, uh, um, so there was one other question about whether or not it's possible to submit your assignment late, right? Payam is asking. There is no way officially in the setup to submit the model assignment late. If you shoot me an email, I'm happy to kind of see if there's something we can do to get in the system. But because it's so late, it may be a problem even now. If you had emailed me like a week ago, it might have been possible. But now it's going to be difficult to do because we have less than a week left for the peer reviews as well. But I can try and see what I can do, Payam. So send me an email. There's no way to do it officially within Complexity Explorer. Okay. Carolina also asked another question: where can I upload my model to give credibility when writing articles? Are there popular repositories for ABM? Yes, there are. I'm not sure how much credibility it gives. It really depends upon the reviewer as to whether or not they assign credibility to it. But probably the most widely known one that kind of spans all sorts of modeling languages and everything is OpenABM, which is openabm.org or .org, right? Let me make sure I got you. Yeah, openabm.org. And in full disclosure, I sit on the steering committee for OpenABM, so I'm kind of plugging it. So I have some interest in plugging it, but they don't pay me or anything, so I don't really get any compensation out of it. But it's become kind of the de facto standard for places to keep your code, and they're very looking forward. They're very forward looking, is what I want to say, right? And what they're doing is they're actually thinking about now how to containerize the code so that, for instance, everyone could run it on their repository. So I would recommend OpenABM of all of them out there. Some other models, some websites have their own version where they like to feature them, but most of them are using OpenABM. I think actually some of the environmental journals, the social environmental journals, are actually now requiring the model to be posted to OpenABM. So that's a good place. Other ones, the other place you could post to GitHub, obviously, right, and just provide a link up there. That at least provides anyone the ability to access it. And you could post it to the NetLogo Modelings Commons. The NetLogo Modelings Commons is great in many respects because it also gives people the ability to comment and collaborate with you in a very easy way. So that's another solution. But OpenABM is probably the most de facto standard out there right now. Okay. Yeah, there was one other interesting question I thought that came up in the feed, the forum, about the future of ABM and where it's going. And I just want to comment. A lot of times you guys are great, very energetic, but you're jumping ahead at times, right? Like that is what we're going to cover in depth in chapters 8 and 9. A small little insight is that I actually see a lot of ABM moving to providing us with increasing amounts of tools that make the construction of complex agent-based models easier, right? And the ability to incorporate new and different sets of data as being a big future aspect of agent-based modeling. So just want to kind of quickly mention that. There was a question about constructing a scatter plot in NetLogo. That's really easy to do. Let's see, I can actually, let me show you real quick. I mean, if you've played around at all with the NetLogo plot, you might have seen it already, right? But I can, for instance, see, I don't have any turtles in this model, but let's see, I have my plot, and right now, it's just doing plot count turtles, but I can actually do plot XY, right? And I can play plot XY X core of turtles. Actually, this might not work because I am plotting a bunch of different. So there's the easiest way I think is going to be to do this. So let's see, if we go in here, let's just add some turtles to our model, create 100, set XY random X core random Y core. And then in the go command, we'll ask the turtles to go forward 1, right, random 90, left, random 90, right. Okay. So now it's set up and go, right? And actually, my plot isn't working. The reason why it's not working is because this is actually going to give it a list, right? So let's just, so the easiest way to do this would actually be to do the plot separately, right? Oh, actually, no, you know what? The reason why the plot isn't working is because you actually have to have ticks running to get plots to work. Set up, go. And in fact, it's giving me an error now because it's saying that it can't plot the list, right? It got a list rather than a single value, which is what I expected. It's not going to help at all. Set up, yeah. So it's gonna have some problems with that. Clear all. Okay. So what you can do instead is leave the plot alone, remove the update command completely, but leave everything else alone. And then I can just basically go down and have the turtles actually plot their own values. So X core, Y core. All right. Yeah. Oh. That in fact is taking so long that it's slowing the system down. Hopefully not crashing it. Maybe crashing it. May have hit upon a small bug. So part of the problem was that I didn't specify in Netlog. I didn't specify which plot I wanted, and it used to be that defaulted to the plot, but because I've created and deleted plots, that can sometimes cause some problems. So let's see. Yep, looks like it's pretty crashed at this point. Let me. Oh wow. In fact, it's so crashed. I may not. Am I still streaming? Yeah, it looks like I'm still streaming. Yeah, well, I may have to take that one up next time because I'm running out of time and I can't seem to. Oh, here we go. I can force quit it this way. Okay, good. I couldn't get the force quit button to show up for a little bit. Okay. So I actually killed my own model there. Let's see if I can bring it back up. And I think I did that because I forgot. Oh yeah, so now the plot's not even there. So let's see. If I add a plot, right? And I delete this out, right? Should be able, let me just check one thing before I do that again. It's funny because I actually don't do plots much from the command line where I do them from inside the actual code itself, right? But if you want to plot like all the stats of all the turtles, right? That's not easy to do, right? So let me just see. Let's make sure that I even have it. Yeah, so that's not causing the problem, right? So let's create 10 turtles, just to be on the safe side. Set X, Y. Oh, Y. Oh, it's not updating for some reason. Interesting. Okay, you're not seeing what I'm doing anymore. Okay. Let me delete that one, add a new one in. Probably because I had to kill and recapture it. Okay, there we go. So that's why random X core, random Y core. Right, okay, let's not even bother with the go loop, but let's just ask the turtles to plot X, Y, X core, Y core. Let's see. Hopefully this doesn't crash everything again. I'll save that off just in case. Right, okay. So there you go. You got it. You can't even see the turtles, right, because they're the same background color. And let's edit the plot just to make it so that this is a scatter, a point plot, and not a line plot. Oh, you can't see that. That's always annoying about the way OBS works. Okay, let me show you that again. Yeah. So here is, when you click on the plot, advanced plot options, advanced pen options, right? I can change from, it's usually defaults to line, but I can change it to point, okay? So that's what I'm going to do here, right? And then, once I've done that, I will then see a window that looks like this, which I have to now add in separately. So annoying. Okay. Right. And it just has all the basic defaults, and I deleted the pen update commands. That was the other thing you didn't see before. Right? So hit OK on that. Let's close this out, close that out. Right. And now if I hit setup and I hit go, right, you'll see the scatter plot right there. Okay. So that gets you a scatter plot. Wow, sorry, that took way longer than it should have, basically because I think, so the really, let me show you, the really correct way to do what I was trying to do, before you do a plot in the command, you should always do set current plot 1, or whatever the name of your plot is, and then set current plot pen default, right, which is the name of my pen, right? And I kind of skipped over that because of the fact that I was trying to be quick, right? The problem is that if you've modified the plot, or if you've added or deleted plots, right, the NetLogo doesn't know which plot to use anymore and which pen to use, and so the kind of skipping those commands only works well when literally all you did was start the model up, create the plot, and start plotting. Right? If you've done anything else to kind of mess around with the plots, NetLogo is not good at trying to figure out which exact plot you want, and apparently that caused it to crash in this particular case. And usually it doesn't crash. Usually it just gives you a bunch of crazy errors, right? But anyways, so the good programming practice is that if you're going to modify the plot programmatically from within the code, always set the current plot, always set the current plot pen, so that NetLogo knows which plot pen to use. Hopefully that's helpful. Sorry that took a little longer than it should have. Okay. So Dia actually asked a question. They've read my book on NetLogo, but they're still confused about how to validate the result if data is generated from a random seed. This is a good question, right? And we're going to be talking a lot about this in Chapter 7, in Unit 7 and Unit 8. So I highly recommend looking at Unit 8, first of all, Dia, to give you some answers. But this is really a statistical problem, right? So you have output from a model, right? And now you're trying to determine if the output from a model matches in some interesting way the real world. So you have some real world data, and you have the output from a model. And there's many, many ways to kind of statistically test to see if one set of data matches. Like, let's say it's just one value, right? Like you've gone down to one value, right? Then you can ask the question, given a mean and a standard deviation, what is the probability of seeing the real world value given the mean and the standard deviation generated by my model output? Now that assumes your model output is normally distributed. If it's not, if it's bimodally distributed, things like that, it becomes more complex. But essentially that's a statistical question, right? Another way to do it is to do likelihood testing, right? And so really for likelihood testing, you want some null way of thinking about, well, what ignore agent-based modeling, what is a statistical process that could have generated the real world data, right? And then you write up what that statistical process is, and then you write up what your model output is, and then you look at the likelihood ratios between the model and the statistical process. And if the model is much more likely to have generated the real world value, then you feel more confident that that is more likely to be a true model, right? And so that's kind of a complex, more technical. Like the simple answer is it really depends upon your data, right? One world that one simple example is, like in the introduction to agent-based modeling, the agent-based modeling for marketing paper that I wrote, what we did was we generated model outputs. We looked at the average model data generated by that output, and then we calculated an R-squared value between that model output and the real-world data, right? And what we showed is that the R-squared values that we got were above a certain level that were similar to a similar level generated by another model, right? And so that's one way. That's another way of doing validation, right? And so it really, really depends upon the particular data, the particular questions. But I think the real answer is you're asking, like, if I have a random seed, it's generating different data all the time. Well, you have to come up with some statistical summary of the data that's being generated, right? And then compare that statistical summary to real-world model output. And that could be through means of standard deviations, right? Getting into like the details of I'm giving you some insights into statistical modeling in this class, but really, that's a little beyond this class to kind of go into that in too much detail. One last question, and then we'll wrap up because it's been about an hour already. K. Berens asks, how big can a world be, maximum area? I've tried to set it to 2,000 by 2,000 patches just for fun. Didn't work. I have a PC with 16 gigabyte. Do I have to set some Java JVM parameters? Simple answer is probably yes. Usually, and there's some, let me see if I can find it quickly. There are, on the command line, it's easy. You can just tell the Java compiler to use more memory when allocating space for NetLogo, right? I think it defaults, even if you have 16 gigabytes, I think it defaults only providing 2 or 4 gigs available. So it doesn't matter if you have more than that, right? Because it doesn't want to use up all your memory, right? If you're running on the PC, I think there's a tip in one of the NetLogo documentation pages, about setting memory. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. So there is a file on Windows called netlogo.cfg that specifies how much space you could generate. So there is, in the NetLogo documentation, let me show you this real quick. In the NetLogo documentation, there is this question, how big can my model be? How many turtles, patches, procedure button, blah, 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 right? And it says, the NetLogo engine limit has no limits on size. By default, ships with a 1 gigabyte ceiling, so it's even less, 1 gigabyte. If your model exceeds that limit, you'll get an out-of-memory dialog. If you're using behavior space, note that, it will multiply the models excessively, right? But each platform contains a .cfg file, which contains the JVM settings. You can change that file, right? And that file will allow you to allocate more memory. And then it goes on to explain where those files actually are, right? So I would recommend, if you're trying to modify it, right? Like it really is, there is no fixed limit, right? I recommend, oh, sorry, you're still seeing that screen. I recommend, kind of seeing what you need to do to kind of get to that space, okay? So, sorry, saw my YouTube window for a while there. Okay, so that's it for today. Unit 6 on analyzing agent-based models. I don't know why I keep wanting to make this Unit 7 already. But Unit 6 on analyzing agent-based models is what we're working on this week. make sure you get your peer reviews in, and that's it for now. So have a good week, everybody, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye.